Israeli combat vehicles were always of special interest for enthusiasts. Due to large numbers of modifications implemented, the different appearance and often rich combat experience, IDF stuff is always popular. MiniArt made the logical step towards Tiran tanks, based of course on their beautiful line of T-54s and T-55s, which are the best in the modeling business so far. The options with and without interior was an addition to that, since Tirans in 35th scale are not widely available with the exception of TACOM and trumpeter kits, which are inferior compared to MiniArts. The kit we're unboxing today is going to be the first video of series of reviews of MiniArt Tirans, which will be hopefully a long and a lasting line of kits spread well into the future. As usual, the kit that feature interior as this one come in a thick and crowded box with a beautiful box art, which differs from the one without interior by the background behind the tank on the box art. MiniArt added several options depicted on the side of the box, which we will discuss later in the video. Once inside of the box, one can be surprised how much is packed within. Of course, MiniArt kits are always abundant in parts, but the fact that this includes interior as well makes the situation here even more intense. Big envelopes hold smaller ones, as well as decal sheet and Photo-Etch packed in a cardboard envelope. A standard nowadays for MiniArt Photo-Etch packings, which is a very cool idea implemented by the Ukrainian model maker. The front of the instruction sheet has all the highlights of the kit described. That is a small hint of what's up next, but gives you a general idea about the model you're about to start. This Tiran features workable torsion bar, complete V54 diesel engine, fully detailed driver and fighting compartments, as well as much more that you will shortly see. Instruction sheet features a mix of colored and black and white pages, both made from high quality material. The build starts with the engine, which is beautiful. By itself, it has many parts, enough to be a kit by its own, and if you are a devoted modeler, you will treat it like such. Weathering and painting such an animal will take a while, especially if you are interested in achieving proper accuracy. Once you start building of the lower part of the hull, you get a gradual increase of difficulty due to the increasing number of parts and the fact that the space you're working with is too gradually beginning to get smaller and smaller. T-54-55 series are small tanks and they are crowded in real life. This kit is the best T-series representation and it doesn't differ much from the original, of course. You have stuff on the walls, on the floor, and basically everywhere you can stuff something. But the biggest trouble of all is the fact that most of that has to be pre-painted and pre-weathered. Once in, most of that stays there for good. So, you gotta pre-plan everything carefully. This tank utilizes every spare space for ammunition holding. Once you get to build and put the engine in, the situation gets really claustrophobic. The worst thing is, even if you build everything perfectly, you will have some hard time admiring the interior once you close the tank. Good idea that MiniArt offered a version without the interior in case you are more interested in having the exterior and admiring only that. Alongside the whole build, more often than not, you get some Photo-Etch parts here and there. The Photo-Etch sheet is quite large and it is spread everywhere on the tank. One thing you need to know about MiniArt Photo-Etch is the fact that this is one of the thinnest in the business. Sanding that sometimes causes problem during the preparation phase of the metal elements, but not if you are careful enough. Going further into the build instructions, you might expect that at some point things will become more easygoing, but actually this never happens. Not with MiniArt kits anyways. The complexity is all over. The kit is far from being suitable for inexperienced modelers and, in my opinion, will be challenging even for some expert. Not much is missed from the real thing, and that is the main reason why it is so complex. Tracks, for example, 19 links per side with the option to be fully movable. But the biggest challenge of all is the turret, in my opinion. The reason in the Tiran's case is not only the fact that T-series cupola is small. The other reason is that from the outside, Israelis put some items which change the overall simplicity of the cupola, making this section of the build, and the instructions of course, far more intriguing for some and very challenging for others. So the turret, no matter inside or out, will be very demanding. There is nothing spared, even some parts which could have been made from a single part are divided into several. But this defines MiniArt and their kits. I truly trust that they did proper research, although with Israeli vehicles that is not an easy task. The whole build will take twice or maybe 3 times more than what a regular tank from any other company might take. But it will be very rewarding in the end. If you watched closely the renders in the beginning of this video, you probably noticed that the final vision of the tank is superb and very close to the real thing, and it is hard to tell that this is a miniature. In the instruction sheet too, no stone was left unturned and MiniArt did a great job overall. The final word, of course, will be given to the experts who know what was the quality of the research and is this a proper representation of Tiran 4SH? Let's take a quick look at the plastic. First and most important thing about the kit featuring such small and numerous details is the quality of the product. MiniArt were famous for cracks and breakage of some of the most intricate elements couple of years ago. Due to the fact that the company insists on providing very small and fragile details and always features myriad of subassemblies, continuation of that model of work was impossible. That's why MiniArt turned toward a Western European supplier of high-quality plastic material, which eliminates the need of tranquilizers for the modeler once the build starts. Nowadays, and this is valid for the last couple of years, MiniArt plastic shows no such defect, no troubles caused from the material itself. Very important with any MiniArt kit, but with the T-series tank especially. Many tubes, fuel lines, tiny elements and such are all over, and if, and I say if, the plastic was the old one, this build would have been an impossible task. Even if possible, it would have been a hell ride, not a pleasant time spent on a kit. With that we have here now, the build is still complex, but it is a pleasure one, especially for those who love to enjoy long and slower building processes. As for detailing, the above set justifies the efforts and hints you that there is no compromises here anymore. There is no competition from any company as far as it comes to T-54, T-55 series. There are models from other companies, but the level is lower and you can see why. Every tiny thing seen on the real thing is scaled down and present here. I must admit that it sometimes looks a bit too much, at least for me. I first started working on tank models as a partial relief from the cockpits and gear base of the aircraft. I enjoyed tanks because whatever mistake you make, you can cover it with damage, while with airplanes there is no room for mistakes. However, those interior kits changed the game. Now, even though very dirty and unmaintained from the inside, tanks are demanding and far more challenging than airplanes. First, due to the number of parts, then due to the small space that you have to work with, and lastly, because so many various things can be found in one tank and different on top of that, that this might be a little hell ride for anyone seeking easy build and ease of mind. Part number here dictates that this isn't easy nor simple build. Although so far we talked about plastic, and you can see that plastic parts here are nothing short than gorgeous. The engineering here is brilliant too. Tanks, especially T-series, can be seen in condition which is partially damaged or quite often totaled and abandoned. Pictures are various and many, plus easily discoverable on internet. Only MiniArt gives you the model that can be sufficient to execute such a copy, since the various subassemblies allow for making a wreck without even thinking about scratch building. Of course that you can spice it up more, but there is no kit on the market representing T-54 or T-55, let alone Tiran version, that can give you so much straight out of the box and at that price. Most of the competitive options will leave your hands tied. Some, like the MiniArt Tiran, are so simple that your hands will be tied behind your back if you want to make something more complex. With this Tiran 4, even without interior, things are something completely different. In other words, welcome to MiniArt's universe. Now, I'm pretty sure that looking at those plastic sprues, there will be a lot novice modelers wanting to get this kit. I wouldn't recommend that. What I would suggest is to get the option without the interior. It is basically the same tank with everything externally the same, without the parts that you will struggle with the most, those of the inside. Now, don't get me wrong here, you won't regret if you listen to me on this. Even if you get the version that doesn't have interior, you will be challenged if you are new to the hobby. To be frank, at some stages I still am after a quarter of a century in modeling. It is not a puzzler, but it requires understanding of the building process and a thorough one. So in case you're interested in the Tiran from MiniArt, but you are new to modeling, you can still get the same kit with almost the same box art and work only on the shell of the vehicle without bothering getting into the internals. Or, of course, you can get this one and leave some of the internal parts aside. Either way, as you can see, you will have to deal with tons of parts and sub-assemblies. Tools are most important here, especially nippers. Without good side cutters, this build is a lost cause. Sanding sticks too. I would prepare at least 3 variants of those, depending on the thickness of the elements to be worked on. As you can guess from everything said above, the kit is not demanding only in terms of time and skills. You have to have the time and the tools to cope with it. That is one of the reasons people are being scared from MiniArt. And to some extent, that is justified. On the other hand, it is hard to resist to such brilliant miniature, which obviously was designed and created with love and devotion. Now, some people complain about lack of texture on some areas. That might be true, but the thicker primer sprayed from a bit further than usual, or with rough brush and Mr. Surfacer, this can be easily fixed in the areas where you need it to be. On the other hand, the opposite is not exactly fixable. If you remember the AFV Club M60 patent tank and its famous turret casting, well, you know, AFV Club overdid the texture, which ruined the kit for many. So this isn't a problem per se here. I mean the lack of texture on some parts eventually. Yes, some of the parts are flat, but that isn't a problem. It is the approach MiniArt used. As you saw, some of the elements feature perfect texture, so obviously the lack of ability in engineering and molding isn't the reason why MiniArt chose to do it that way. All in all, the plastic is very good. It is not perfect, like Tamiya for example, but the kit features a lot more details than the regular tank, and maybe that is the price one have to pay. You can't have your cake and eat it too, you know. Many things can be said and discussed about those sprues here, but the conclusion is that the quality is well above the average and it is sufficient enough for any modeler who knows their way around building a show-stopping kit. Most definitely this Tiran has the potential of being such, mostly because of the elements included. The bad thing is that interior will remain hidden no matter what you do, except if you don't do various cutaways here and there, or you separate the tank in several different levels, like few modelers did with Tacom's King Tiger or Dragon's T-52s with interior. I believe that if you want to do that, better get both of the kits with and without interior, build the one without to show the outside, and partially complete this one here to show the internals to the spectators. Considering the price, this will be a very wise decision after all. We were discussing texture, right? Have you seen such wonderfully molded texture elsewhere? I haven't, and I have a humongous stash of kits, and I am often pretty picky about what I get. It doesn't matter is it fabric, welding line, or metal texture. MiniArt know what they're doing obviously. Interestingly enough, this kit shows a mixture of elements representing all those mentioned above: texture, metal, fabric, whatever you can think of. And as it stands before us, we can easily conclude that resin might not be the best option for some aftermarket parts, at least not anymore, especially with the poisonous nature that it has. With the quality demonstrated here, I trust that MiniArt can produce a perfect stowage set for this Tiran and imitate the fabric to a perfect level unbeatable by any resin company. They did some fabric here and there, and I trust that it might not be flawless but is nearing that statement. Welding lines as well, which are a good guideline in that direction of our discussion here. MiniArt did another perfectly good example with the rubber parts of the mudguards with this kit, with proper bending and all that required from you, the modeler, is to execute a decent painting and weathering, so to get one kit that will be spectacular as a result from a clever and devoted engineering. You can hardly get this with any other company, even though most of them produce 21st century kits nowadays. I want to devote a special section to the wheel sprockets and tracks. I strongly feel that those deserve attention greater than the normal. Many repetitive sprues here due to the detailing, of course. Now, what I want to emphasize on here is the fact that many consider that part of the tank for not so important one, excluding the tracks. However, in the same time, many kit bash and combine different wheels quite often, especially with T-series of tanks. Usually aftermarket wheels can be purchased, but there is definitely no need in this kit. A lot of attention was invested into the wheels, their treads and markings, as well into the sprockets and idlers. I don't want to leave any doubt about the honesty of my reviews, so I will start with the fact that flash is present. Yes, that is one of the downsides of MiniArt's kits. Not always, but here there is some. Luckily, wheels need to be damaged more often than not, so flash won't be an issue here. Same goes for the idlers and the sprockets, however, idlers seems a bit more flash infested than the sprockets. Latter ones are greatly detailed and from both sides, which is good, but you have to weather them before installing the tracks. Speaking of tracks, this is one of the highlights of this kit. Those tracks here are better than any aftermarket substitute. They can be assembled movable, but only if you're careful enough, and in the same time they feature better texture than any model cast or frill sets, which are both as expensive as this whole kit is. Tracks, and never mind the perfect quality here, are enough as an add-on by themselves. Considering the execution with this kit, that includes the molding of the small number on each link, will be defining of the kit's overall quality. They say a system is as strong as the weakest link it has. In this case, the only weak link about this kit is the flash, but that can be omitted, so actually I haven't seen any weak side beside the complexity of the build, of course. Decal sheet is not that big, but the clear parts are surprisingly many for a tank. The plastic that they are made of is famous, especially if you're familiar with MiniArt tracks and trams that feature beautifully executed clear parts, large one too. Anyhow, this is a tank and a T-54 on top of that, which are ill-famous among their crews in real life with the poor quality of the transparent parts. So actually, I don't think much commenting here will be needed due to that fact. This tank wasn't brand new but a captured vehicle from the Israelis, which most likely meant that they already got the glass parts in poor condition or eventually exchanged them with better ones. Decal sheet is narrow and long and feature hand-painted insignia that is typical for Tiran tanks. DN Models will soon release a set featuring those and more about Tiran series, and have in mind that decals are not that necessary, or at least not to a significant extent besides maybe the license plate only. Here, MiniArt added some additional numbers in case you want to reproduce specific vehicle based on the license plates, but me personally I haven't seen a clear and visible license plate on a Tiran tank. First because pictures are rare, then because clear tank pictured in action is something like a unicorn. Photo-Etch deserves special attention as much as anything else in this kit. It is pretty big and abundant in parts. This is what MiniArt does to you. Even though there are bigger sheets from the aftermarket companies, no company has reached the level that MiniArt have here. The sheet is extremely thin and the parts are perfectly done. Meshes, straps, whatever you can think of is here. During the build, you add some brass here and there, and before you paint, your tank will look quite shiny. However, this thin, the sheet might cause some troubles. I prefer to sand the side of the Photo-Etch that should be glued. I have sanded parts of my meshes quite often before damaging everything, and that was before I got used to MiniArt's thickness. They are fragile, so you should handle with care here. That goes for the whole Photo-Etch sheet, of course, not only for the meshes. But once you get used to the thickness and the flexibility, you will be okay. Do you remember the video that I did about possibly the best Cold War tank in 35th scale ever? This is part of the same line, so Israeli fans, I do sympathize your spending budgets. This kit is unbeatable on so many levels that I cannot even begin to comment on that. But let's mention some downsides. There is flash, the kit is extremely complex due to the interior, metal gun barrel is advisable, but how that will cope with the interior is yet unclear. If you can solve all those mentioned above, you definitely have the ultimate Tiran 4 in any scale. Luckily for IDF fans, this is only a small fraction of what's coming to you. 3 Tiran versions are already released by MiniArt. Probably each of those will be available with and without interior. And that isn't MiniArt's final word either. I will review all of them, that I can promise. Some experts might find some discrepancies with the real thing, but this is only speculation here. As for accuracy, as far as I'm informed, this is the best option for Tiran tank of any modeling company. What I would like to see next is Photo-Etch set from MiniArt and KMT Mine Roller as a standalone or as a pack with tanks such as this one. Now stay tuned because next Tiran review is already in production. Different version of course. These are the hardest reviews due to the complexity of the kits, but imagine the time when you should sit down and build it. I hope you enjoyed so far. Comment, subscribe and share. Don't forget to visit MiniArt site for more info about their Tiran series and DN Models website for Tiran Insignia mask set. Thank you for watching and I will see you in the next one.